Hey guys, and welcome to episode 28 of the Cardinals Nation 24/7 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lollis, and with me, as always, is the living legend, Larry Cox. How you doing tonight, Larry?
All right, Chris, good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. I know it's been a couple weeks since we've got on, and it's not breaking news anymore. But we'll dive into the big news that obviously Mike Shilt got relieved of his duties earlier in the month, and the Cardinals announced that Oliver Marmol has been promoted to be the next manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. When I first heard this, I mean, as soon as Shilt got fired, I think the main candidates were Stubby Clapp and Oliver Marmol. There was some talk that maybe outside the organization, a Skip Schumacher and some other former Cardinals would be considered. But going with Marmol, just your initial reaction to that. I've got some of my own that I'll dive on to. But what was your thoughts on Marmol being the hire?
Well, I mean, nobody really knew a lot about him because, again, you don't really know much about bench coaches and assistants. But knowing that he's been in the system for as long as he has, he's came through the system. I think he's pretty much a Cardinal. And I like the internal hires better. And I know a lot of fans aren't real big on new managers, but I would rather see a new manager than a retread manager that they've been hired, they've been fired. One of the names was mentioned was like Bobby Valentine, and I'm not going to get into that. But so, why hire a manager who's been fired 3 or 4 times? Maybe a younger guy like this brings more energy to the group, and especially these guys know him, so there's a familiarity with him. And I kind of like the hire. I really do.
Well, him being a young guy, I mean, he is now the youngest manager in the major leagues at 35 years old. And for me, it's hard to wrap my head around because I already struggle with thinking Adam Wainwright's older than I am. Yadier Molina is younger than me. I don't know. I think of myself younger than I actually am. But to have a 35-year-old manager, you're looking at the possibility of a long career. And he has worked his way up through the minors. It's not like he's a totally new face to the organization. I did think that an internal move is what the Cardinals would do. It seems to be that's what they did when they called Shilt up and going with Matheny too. They wanted guys kind of in house. I think that does make more sense, especially with next year being kind of your all in year. You don't want to go out and bring in somebody outside the organization that has no familiarity with the players and the current staff. So I think, it totally makes sense, to promote him. And I really thought it would come down to him and Clapp. Clapp might have been a little more old school than Marmol. And if the philosophical differences that Mo talked about, I'm not saying Clapp would be more like Shilt than Marmol, but I think Marmol might embrace the analytical side a little more than what Stubby Clapp would, and that might have been the deciding factor.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about how young he is. He was born a month after I graduated high school. But no, I mean, the reality is, I mean, we brought John Mozeliak in to replace Walt because the franchise was stagnant with the minor leagues weren't going anywhere. Salaries were going through the roof. So you bring in Mo. So what is Mo's job? Let's just kind of just revamp the entire system. So why not just grow a homegrown manager from a draft pick and teach him what you want him to do at every level and him be a homegrown guy? I mean, like you said, most of these guys, he grew up with them. And so he's, come through the system with them and he knows them and he knows their tendencies. He knows their likes, their dislikes. And I mean, he's probably been friends with him. He's probably drank a beer or two with him, So there is a little bit of a difference, but then does it become though is, the favoritisms, does he, hey, I like this guy better because, he didn't date my girlfriend after I was done with her, whatever, And so that's kind of the thing too, I think kind of is out there on that ledge, I guess so to speak, that it could become a distraction. But like you said, if you're going to talk about bringing in the, sabermetrics, the analytics, and they come in, you got a guy that's all they've taught him maybe. I don't know. I really don't, because this whole new system's been embraced. I mean, as far back as Jeff Luhnow and all that, that's when it kind of started, really. And so you look at other teams, the Dodgers, the Astros, the Padres, those guys all embrace this. Even the Yankees have tried with Boone, to make this work. It's not worked out in their favor because of injuries, but I like I said, this is kind of, to me, I like this idea. I like the bringing in of a younger guy from in-house because, like you said, you're not starting from ground zero. I mean, if you brought in a Tony La Russa or somebody like that, they're going to try to put their stamp on this team. And I don't think that's what this team needs right now. I think it needs to continue to grow. You know, we see in the end of the year last year with some of these players and just how they overcame. I mean, you know, you picked it last year. You know, you said O'Neal was going to be the breakout guy. And that was because we stayed with him. You know, you didn't give up on him. And even like Bader toward the end of the season, nobody gave up on him. They kept sending out there, and we've seen what happened in long term. So maybe that's the same thoughts behind a manager from within, that you've groomed him through the different cycles, the single A's, the triple A's, and on. And now here's the majors. He sat on the bench for a couple of years, and now here he is. So maybe this is the ideal situation. Until it happens, we're not going to know what's going on, really.
Right. And I mean, he does have a lot of baseball experience. For those that don't know, he was drafted by the Cardinals in 2007. Played, I think, 3 seasons where he was a 200 hitter and just realized baseball really wasn't for him as a player, but he really had the passion to coach. And so he became a hitting coach for the Gulf Coast Cardinals, and he led Johnson City Cardinals to a championship the following year. So, like, he's climbed the ranks. He was eventually Palm Beach Cardinals manager. Then he was called up to be the first base coach before the 2017 season, and then was the bench coach for Shilt, the last few seasons. So, like, he's got familiarity with, top to bottom. He was another one of Kissel's guys that, he really believes in the Cardinal way. Mo did say that Ollie will have his fingerprints on this team, that it's not just the puppet, that everybody on Twitter and Facebook says he's just going to be a puppet and a yes man. We kind of thought Shilt was a yes man, and for him to be let go, it's like there is, I think, for the average fan, concern on what a manager does have, as far as, not saying rights, but like how he handles the clubhouse. Does every decision come down from the front office? And he kind of nipped that in the bud a little bit by saying there is complete clarity on what the ownership expects out of him, and the communication is going to be key, not just between him and the front office, but all the divisions, with the analytic department, the drafting and everything. They all going to come together and be a little more open than what they have been. So I was glad to hear that, and him kind of come out in front of it, and a week or two ago when we were hearing the press conference with Shilt, the firing of him, and just how vague it was. It was nice to kind of have him come out and be like, hey, I've talked to Shield. I've got his blessing moving forward. No hard feelings there, and, I'm anything less than a World Series is going to be considered a disappointment, and you kind of expect that from a new manager to say that, but he said it was some force behind it. So that was good to hear.
I think for a lot of people, that's like the first time most people have heard him talk. And the fact that he had it all pretty much together, professionalism and all that comes into play, but he said the right things. And as far as the yes man, the belief, or whatever they want to call it, I have a boss. You have a boss. She's in the other room right now. And so for the most part, you pay me $1 million. Yes, sir. You want Bader to lead off? Yep, he's going to lead off. Fire me at the end of the year, I still made $1 million. And I don't care what anybody says that, a yes man, oh, I wouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. Tony La Russa was a yes man. I don't care. And when he wasn't, they fired him. Ask him about Chicago White Sox. And so it doesn't matter. I mean, you're bringing a new guy in, and he's going to have to listen to what they want. And like I said, I think a lot of our fans, especially in the group that we talk to, a lot of them, the age of say 25 and under, have never seen a losing season in St. Louis under John Mozeliak. Those of us that are older, we lived through the 90s and the struggles of the 70s, and then we lived through the whitey ball of the 80s, and then with the dominance of the 2000s with Albert and them. And it is a different world for us now. But we've seen the struggles in the past, and we've seen it with these guys. And we know we're right on the cusp of seeing quality baseball and great baseball from these players. And you bring in a Goldschmidt, and you bring in a Arenado and those guys like that, and you think, what piece are we missing? Well, maybe Marmol's that guy that knows, hey, maybe here's what I see, a Paul DeYoung doing that I can help him with, that Shilt was standing between me and him and saying, hey, don't do that, leave him alone. And then even like today, like we were talking about before he came on, Wu from The Athletic, she wrote, I believe, I think it's Wu, yeah, I think it's Katie, I think. But anyhow, she had wrote that the 17-game winning streak started when the team embraced Jeff Albert's system and stepped away from Shilt's beliefs. So maybe that is part of the issue there. Maybe the team's seen that. Maybe the reasoning behind the firing was that the players went to John Mozeliak and said, we're getting mixed messages. The organization wants this, Shilt wants this, and maybe Marmol comes in and he's that voice of clarity, says, we're going to use what Alberts teaches because this is what Houston did. This is how they're successful. That's why they're the best hitters in baseball. And so maybe that's the difference. But locally, we have a player here in town that he actually played for the Houston Astros. And next time I see AJ, I'm going to ask him, because I think he would have been in Houston when Alberts was there. So I'm going to ask him, maybe there's something to that, because unfortunately for AJ, he didn't hit at the major league level. He hit every other level, but he didn't hit major leagues. So now he's a local baseball coach here of our Terre Haute Rex. And he's a good guy. He grew up, he went to the same school I did, high school I did. But so maybe there's something there. Maybe Albert's techniques, you have to grow into it or something like that. Because again, what does a hitting coach at the major league level do? He's not fixing your swing. He's not, hey, you've got this big swing, we're going to fix it, because that's the swing that got you in the major leagues. They're not going to fix that. They are going to fix your approach. And even when Big Mac was here, he said, the secret of his hitting was zone hitting. He knew the zones where they like to get him out, so he just avoided those zones. He said, if I want it low and away and this guy, that's where he throws it, I'm sitting on that low and away fastball because that's where I'm going to hit. So analytics has been here for a long time, but people just, they act like it's this new voodoo magic that just showed up. I'm sorry. You remember Bobby Cox and the Atlanta Braves? They had the binders. They wrote all the notes. The starting pitcher for the next night, his job was to take all the notes, and they dominated the 90s. And then even you go back to Tony La Russa days, how many times did we see them consult the 3-ring binder on the side? One of the first baseball games written for a computer was a Tony La Russa baseball game that I owned. And it was all about statistics, and it used the rotisserie style baseball in the Bill James era. And that's where it all kind of came from as far as the Cardinals way and some of that changed with Tony. So it's not something new.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about it too is, like, since the 81 season, we've had 6 managers, and that's Whitey Herzog, Tony La Russa, and Joe Torre, who are all Hall of Famers. Then you had Mike Matheny that reached, a World Series, and then Shilt, who has a better winning percentage than all of them. So we've had a pretty good track record of management, even though the end results might not be, what we wanted. But I think Marmol, being named the 6th, I think there is some pressure there on him, but I don't think it's a win it all or you're fired type of thing. But I do think there's the pressure of knowing, and he did get out in front of this too by saying, with it being Wainwright and Yachty's last season, that's even more incentive. The ultimate goal is making the World Series anyway, but we're really going to work our ass off to get that title for those guys. I think a little bit of pressure for him, but his youthfulness and just the comfortability with the players. And like you said, he's going to embrace Jeff Albert's system, which we've kind of been critical of at times, but we don't know. We're like anybody else. We don't know really the deep dive on how it is from the minors to the majors and how his system works. But if they're going to fully embrace it, I agree that if you've got Shilt wanting to go one way and him going another, you're kind of splitting the battlefield up where, players are going to have pick sides, and that's not a good look. I did think it was weird that Mo talked about during the Shilt ordeal that it was kind of some things had led up to this decision, and it wasn't an easy one. And then during the Marmol conference, he did say that, after the LA game, he still didn't believe that he was going to be making a managerial move, which makes a lot of us think that at the end of the year when the team had their meetings that something got said, and, maybe it got said from Shilt. I don't think it did, because if he was shocked, I don't think that, it had to have come from a few different sources. So that's, again, something that we're just going to end up speculating on, but pretty wild.
Just when you watch the press conference, when they announced the firing, the whole, okay, we're going to, and I'm sorry, I don't know the guy's name, but he started off the press conference. Then he said, we're going to go to John Mazalak, the president of baseball operations. And then he stopped and he goes, no, we're going to go to the ownership group of Bill DeWitt Sr. And DeWitt looked like he just woke up and he's like, wait a minute, what's going on? You know, that guy, and it did. And so to me, and then the firing on the phone, something somewhere came out, and Shilt was already gone from St. Louis when that happened. So there was a change there for some reason. And I just got a feeling that those star players came in the form of Yachty and Arenado and even Goldschmidt. Those guys carry the weight. And one of those guys came in, maybe it's Arenado. I mean, maybe Arenado and Shilt didn't get along and we don't know about it. He has that opt-out, man. You know, that's a huge burden right there. And you're saying, or leverage, I should say, guess what? I'm here or Shilt's here. And maybe we don't know. I don't want to put that on a player and say that's why, but we don't know. And we're going to continue to speculate what happened until Shilt lands another job someplace. And then he comes out and says, hey, here's what really happened. Because we know he's not going to throw anybody to the bus until he gets another job. And he may take time off. He may never get another job. Who knows? I heard Mike Matheny may hire him. Who knows? But even like the managers, like we said, when you said that we had 6 managers, when they brought in Matheny, you know, he was handed the keys to a Porsche. Well, he wasn't. He lost 2 of our best players that year that he came in, and Albert was gone, and you know, and Wainwright was coming back from an injury, and so it was not like, hey, guess what? We're giving you an all-star team and let's run with it, you know. And so he had to manage, and I think he did his best job. And I think he did a lot of good for the organization. He won a lot of games. I mean, I think that 2012 year, we won like 100 games that year. We were the front runners, I think, for the entire year. And then just the wheels came off, and you know, in the World Series, of course. But and then we came in with Shilt, and Shilt was manager of the year. So evidently, John Mazalak knows something. I mean, I'm sorry. I hate to disagree with people. And yes, call me a homer. I don't care. I'm so sick of seeing that typed up. No, if you see the system works, why fight it? I'm an insurance broker, and everything we do is based on systems. The system of sales, the system of a cycle, everything is systematic. And all good businesses have systems they run with. And John Mazalak has a system. And you know, they brought in Jeff Luhnow, and everybody gives him credit for all that. Jeff Luhnow didn't find half these guys that were there. He just didn't do it. And we're going to give him credit for it, but he didn't do it. And even when he went to Houston, how many number 1 picks? I mean, I can name 3. Well, I can name 2. I already named 1. AJ Reed was 1. He's a number 1 pick. The Apple kid, he didn't do nothing. So he swung and missed on several picks too. But he made good draft or good trades is what he did when he got there. And that's how he got a lot of the players there. But I think it's just going to come down to, does Marmol follow the system as it's laid out, which I think that's what he's going to do. And I don't think he's going to try to reinvent baseball.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to try to reinvent it either. And, you know, one thing that I'm not going to say this was the deciding factor at all, but, you know, he is now not just the 51st Cardinals manager, but he's the 2nd minority manager for the Cardinals. And I think, you know, especially in this day and age, that is something that I think fans should be excited about and embracing, is this guy can speak 2 fluent languages. You know, we got a lot of Spanish speaking ball players. I think the relationship between them, I can't say that them and somebody like a Mike Shilt had any kind of a hard time, you know, with translating. But I think this is an easy thing for somebody that's fluent in both, you know. And the second guy, or the first guy, I guess, is Mike Gonzalez, who managed parts of the 38 1940 seasons, was the first. So it's been a long time coming for the Cardinals to have another minority manager. So not that was the reason. I mean, obviously Marmol's got a track record through the minors and worked his way up, but I do think that's something that the Latino community is excited about, seeing somebody brought in, and, you know, I'm kind of excited for that too.
Yeah, and Matheny's fluent in Spanish as well. So that was another thing with him that I really did intrigue me with him, knowing that he was, the defensive minded catcher he was, and he was not a hitter. But then the team he had was surrounded by hitters. Go figure. Um, Again, I think no matter how good or how bad a manager is, if you have a bad product on the field, it's going to show. I mean, you take a team like, say, we sat here in the preseason, me, you, and Jared, we talked about what teams are going to get the World Series. It was hands down San Diego Padres. Just give them the trophy, call it a year, and let's go home. They didn't make the playoffs. They've got $200-300 million guys in their infield. They got 175, $185 million first baseman who didn't even start toward the end of the year. They went out and traded for like 25 pitchers. It felt like, and yet they wouldn't even make the playoffs. The first thing they did is fire their manager. And so, I don't always think it always transpires the way that we want to draw it up. And I think the whole human element, that's why we all love baseball. Even like the Braves, as much as, nobody really embraced them as a powerhouse, but one guy did predict it. I don't know who that guy is. But the thing is like right now they're, some of our fans in our group are saying, oh yeah, their GM's better than our GM because he went out and got pieces at the trade deadline. Yeah, he went and traded for 3 outfielders after signing 2 free agencies in the offseason. And only one outfielder got hurt. So he had to go get 3 just so he would be sure he had one that was decent. And which is not a stupid move by any means. But what would have happened if Ozuna would have been cleared to play for some strange reason? If that would have just, hey, oh, wait a minute, his wife lied, blah, 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 let's go back to playing. Now they've got 5 or 6 outfielders, and you just trade away young talent to pick up a guy. And maybe, Rosario, maybe he's the guy sitting on the bench during the Dodgers game because he's the odd man out. And wait a minute, what happens now? Because they traded for him as he was injured. And so, that's the thing. We can't predict baseball. Who's the star of the night? Jock Peterson was the GOAT in Chicago. Everybody couldn't believe they signed him, but yet I remember a lot of our fans screaming, why aren't we signing this guy? And, in Chicago, he didn't do anything. He really didn't. And then when he gets to Atlanta, he started off hot, and then he kind of faded again. Gets postseason, and the guy's bat come to life. And now everybody wants a pearl necklace.
Yeah.
And so,
it is crazy. And you can't predict some things. I mean, no matter how statistically driven the Cardinals are or analytically, however you want to describe it, you can't predict what guy's going to get injured. You can't predict, things like the Ozuna or Bauer thing where they, you can't predict those things happening. But the Cardinals do a really good job, I believe, of, bringing in guys that have great character. I mean, the only ones that have really kind of been a little bit problematic, and it hasn't been even over the top, has been Carlos Martinez and Tommy Pham with, some of the little mishaps that they had, but nothing major. It seems like the Cardinals always have kind of the clean nose when it comes to ball players. And with the exception of Keith Hernandez, he didn't really have that much. I was waiting for that.
What was the DU? Not Oliver, but the other guy that was the drunk driver that got killed.
Tavares.
No, the pitcher.
Josh Hancock.
Josh Hancock. Yeah, I couldn't remember his name. And I mean, him, they said he had problems before he got to St. Louis. But even that incident, that changed baseball. And like you said, I mean, we stayed out of trouble. I mean, the Cardinals, you just don't see it. And even like when, even you yourself, you couldn't believe we let Ozuna walk. Maybe they knew something we didn't know and they just didn't spread it. You know what I mean? And that's why I always say, as much as we as fans think we know a player, we know the game, the general manager and the president of baseball operation, they know what these guys have for breakfast. And they know, oh yeah, this guy only hits on days that end, and we'll start with a T. Who knows? You know what I mean? That's the world they live in now. You don't know. I mean, a guy's girlfriend breaks up with him that morning and you expect him to go out and hit 300 for the day. We don't know. And so a couple years ago, when Miami mind's blank, trade him to Oakland. Yeah. the outfielder.
Piscotty.
Scotty, thank you. We didn't know about his mother. He was getting ragged and ripped in our group for hitting, under 200. Remember that? They hated the guy. Then it comes to light, oh yeah, his mom's dying from cancer. Then it became a whole different ball game. But just because it's not in the news, we don't know what's going on. So sometimes we need just to back off a little bit and let those powers that be, let them do their job, just like you do yours or I do mine, without all the scrutiny. And fans think they're entitled to something because they buy a ticket. And my biggest thing with that is if I go to a movie and I pay the $25,000 for the ticket to get into the movie theater, and that's with the small popcorn. If I don't like the movie, I can't get my money back. If the actor on the screen is horrible, I can't go to his house and beat him up because I'm not happy with it. And baseball is a form of entertainment. I'm sorry. Fans, the whole word fan comes from, fanatic. And so that's the whole point, that I think at times we care more about baseball as fans than the players playing the game at times. I mean, me as an administrator in our group, I've had people threaten to beat me up because they disagreed with me. I welcome them, come to the house, we'll have a good time, we'll drink a beer. Yeah, okay, whatever. But it's still, you're going too far. And I get frustrated. I mean, I tell you half the guys I don't like in the room, just because I get tired of hearing them. But we don't know until this guy gets on the field what kind of a manager he's going to be. And the only thing I can say is that there's a reason they hired the youngest manager in baseball. They have faith in him for some reason. And I'm willing to say, hey, you know what? John Mozeliak, whether we like him or not, second winningest franchise since he took the helm. You're muted, buddy. Turn off the mute.
Turn off the mute. Okay. You're totally right when it comes to like fans being kind of over the top of things because, for years we've heard DeWitt be referred to as DeWallet, and Mo is Mozo the Clown, that isn't going out and doing what, every fan wants. And if he did, this organization would either be bankrupt or, running the ground so bad that, it's crazy. But what amazes me most is all season long, I've seen some of these people, and a lot of them, talk about how Shilt needs to go. They totally disagree with how he's running this team. The day he gets fired, it's, well, why in the hell are we firing Shilt? What? We need to fire Mo. Well, that is just mind-blowing to me. And then before Marmol is even named a manager, it's kind of, they're already like, whoever this next guy is better get us a World Series or else. And it's like, or else what? I just don't get it. And maybe it's because he's not got the fanfare that a Matt Holliday or Carlos Beltran or Mark McGuire or Skip Schumacher, but all these other guys that have no managerial experience, everybody's like, we want them. We want Willie McGee to be a manager. I love Willie McGee, but I don't think he's cut out to be a manager. Jose Oquendo, we want him to be a manager. Oquendo's knees are shot, and he's good doing what he's doing. Like that ship has sailed. Then there was somebody out on Twitter being like, I think it was actually Greg Amsinger from MLB Network talking about Benji Molina being somebody that I said that conflict of interest with something like that. Hell, Yachty be catching 8 days a week, playing 163 games a season. It's baffling to me how somebody can want certain things. And what we have is like they're wanting to judge it before there's even a pitch made under the team that he's going to have the helm on. So it's crazy. I mean, fans are fans, but we've got some Looney Tunes out there for sure.
We're just as crazy as everybody else. Here we are. So
yeah, I'm not trying to mouth them all, but it's laughable at times, and we're no experts. I mean, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors either. We like to speculate, but at the end of the day, we take at least a reasonable stance on, hey, there's a reason why things are in play. There's a reason why they go a direction. It might not be what we see as needing to be done, but they're getting paid to do it. We're not. We're just sitting here on a podcast. We're not getting paid what they're getting paid to do a job. So
we're not. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm going to renegotiate.
You might want to. But as far as Shilt going forward, I think he's interviewing for the Padres job. I don't know that he'll get that, but I do expect that we'll see him in baseball again. And I don't think he's going to ever elaborate completely on the philosophical difference thing. I think that ship sailed. It is what it is, and move on. I don't think there's going to be any dragging names through the mud. But I personally hope him the best, and so if he goes to San Diego, I hope he does well, but of course not better than what we do.
I mean, hopefully, like I said, again, it's going to come down to what players do. I mean, again, as much as we want the managers to do, when you put the player on the mound, you can't control that. It's basically it's all about them guys doing their job and getting it done. And like you said, everybody, the Reyes thing, I'm sorry, it was the right move. I'm sorry, it just was. With the situation what they had going on, yes, we all want to say Hudson or maybe Flaherty should have came in, but had Reyes gotten out of that inning, you make a print and you're going into extended innings, those guys, that's when they came into play. You were just trying to get out of that inning. And so I get that point. I mean, everybody's going to disagree or agree, whatever, but it is what it is. So who knows? Manager's going to come down to a gut feeling. I mean, I spent about 15 years on the sidelines as a basketball coach. People didn't agree with the way I coached, but I had talent on my bench. I had to coach to them, whatever they were. And you changed your style or you died. I mean, that's just how it was. I mean, I couldn't run up and down the court with 7 guys who were 6'1", and then the next week go pound for pound against a team with 7-footers. You just couldn't do it. And so you had to adjust. And I think that's the same way as a Major League Baseball coach or manager. You kind of, who's hot, who's not. And I think that's what's gotten us in trouble is I often wondered about Shilt, his lineups. If you knew a guy like Arenado's hitting 500 against a pitcher, why is he on the bench? Hey, I'm sorry, I know it's your day off, but guess what? We need a win. You're going to play third, and I'll give you the next day off. We're going to just switch that day. And not only that, but they see the schedule. They know who the pitching matchups are a week ahead of time. And I mean, we can see, who's the starting pitcher, so we can pick the right tickets to a ball game. And I'm nobody, So if I can do it, I'm sure the front office can do it. I'm sure the analytics guys can do it. But it just amazes me at some of the moves he made. And I think that's where Marmol comes in. The analytics guys are going to give him those sheets to go by, the hot sheets or whatever. And I don't know whether, guys pay attention or not, but, watching games, they have the computers, the iPads and stuff in the dugout. Those guys can see the lineups and stuff, and they can see those, they can't watch TV, but they can at least see the matchups and, what pitch tendencies are and all that. And then they all carry around those little pieces of paper and all that stuff too. But I just wonder, are you sending a kid up to hit at 25, 26 years old, and you give him $3,000 possibilities of what a pitcher can do? That kind of probably messes with his mind. The best thing that Stan the man ever said was, you just hit it where they ain't,
Right. I've said that see the ball, hit the ball mentality. I mean, analytics has its place in baseball, but I think it's overwhelming to cram so much information. I mean, it's available out the wazoo on everything from what ballparks, what pitchers. I mean, it's almost like information overload, and especially for young players that I know that's the way they're being brought up now with all this information that wasn't readily available back in the day. But still, it's a lot to deal with. And you wonder too with Shilt, like the way that he would handle post-game interviews, and we fought our tail off, and it was always the really, always having faith in the team, like nothing was wrong, and there's nothing wrong with that, except you kind of want to see a little more, fire. Marmol was very well spoken during his press conference, and although we don't normally get a chance to hear him speak, I hope that he brings a different kind of energy in those post games, of not saying he has to come out and say every little detail of what moves, he got that he made, but just to address things differently. Shilt was a little bit old school in the fact of, he would put Carpenter out there no matter how bad he was struggling, hoping that he finds it. Where I think this, clarity that the front office has given Marmol is, hey, when we see something wrong, we can't, have a long leash on letting a guy try to find his rhythm or a certain pitcher, going deep in a game. If, he's hitting X amount of pitches, then that's what we want the limit to be. That's where we're pulling him. We're not letting him go out, to try to get the win if he's, struggling in the fourth inning. We're making the move immediately to stop the bleeding, where I think Shilt waited a little long sometimes to put the Band-Aid on the bleeding. And before long, some of those games got unreachable quick. I think that's going to be some of the things that Marmol will have to do a little bit different than Shilt.
I think the three batter minimum faced. I think that was part of the deal. But the thing I never could understand, I think a lot of our fans didn't understand, was when you send a guy out, why aren't you warming somebody else up? And I get the old adages that you have to have faith in the guy. It used to be that was a Tony La Russa thing too. When he sent his closer out, he never warmed anybody up until somebody got to second base. Even with Rosenthal and the crap he went through at the time, it was, you didn't do it because you want to tell that guy, hey, I have faith you're going to do this. You're going to get us out of this. But at the same time, when you're sending somebody out that's blowing 7 consecutive saves, you don't send him out there with nobody warming up. And that was part of the thing, I think, as well with that. But even this year coming in, if you think about it, you've alleviated Marmol of a lot of the headaches that Shilt had. No Martinez, no Carp. So those are two big ones right now. And not only that, no Fowler's here anymore. And I realize 1 year he's gone already. I get that. But he still had to deal with him last year, even though he's hurt and sat out and all that happened. But you still have a lot of other stuff that kind of got in the way of baseball. And, then you had, even like last year going into the end of the season, the uncertainty of Molina and Wainwright and all that was coming in as well. And do we know that John Mozeliak didn't say, hey, keep sending Carpenter out? And maybe she'll say, wait a minute, this guy's not finding it. But we all know what happened that May in Chicago when they did send Carper out, even though he's batting under 100 at the time. I think he's batting like 098 when they hit Chicago that time. And he, 3 best days of his career were in Chicago, which, by the way, I think he'll be a Cub next year. I don't know, and we don't know. We're speculating who said, hey, Shilt, here's the lineup, stick to it, or here's what we want you to do. And Shilt said, no, here's what I'm going to do. That's what we don't know. And I don't think we'll ever know that part. Because I don't think either side is going to become classless and just say, hey, Shilt's an asshole, and this is why we did it. I don't think Shilt's ever going to come back and say, hey, Mozeliak screwed me. And I just don't think that's ever going to happen, because I think both personalities have enough class. They would never do that. And I see, a player in the future maybe coming out and saying, hey, this is what's going on behind the scenes in St. Louis, or did or was. But I don't see those two guys ever saying it.
Well, we can swing from that topic to, the remainder of the coaching staff is all said to be coming back next year. I was a little shocked that maybe another move wasn't made. Obviously, if it was Jeff Albert and Shilt that clashed, they're totally backing Albert, where he did have another year on his contract anyway. But bringing him back, you bring a Maddox back, Clapp and Warner, there is the opening now for a bench coach job. They've said the same thing. They're going to look internally and outside the organization. I don't know too many names right now that are linked, but some of them, I guess you could say, would be the same that was considered for, managerial jobs, whether it's a Skip Schumacher or Matt Holliday. And I'm not sure that Skip doesn't get the job in San Diego. If he doesn't, I think he would do really well, with that gig. Personally, I think Matt Holliday, with the relationship he's got with Arenado, and possibly if we go get Trevor Story, the Colorado connection there. But he's already got, a really good relationship with Yachty and Waino. I think it would make sense to see one of those two as opposed to somebody like a McGuire or Beltran or, somebody of that nature. But of namesake, because there might be a guy they call up from the minors, for the bench gig. We don't know that they won't do that, but what say you on some of the people available out there? Who would you like to see be the next bench coach?
Um, I think it's going to be Skip Schumacher. I just have a feeling that's who it is. The reason I said that was because today there was an article. The name being mentioned right now as the front runner for the Padres position is Ozzie Guillen. And there was a big backlash that, some people really don't like his outspokenness and all that in Chicago and what happened in Miami or Florida. And but he would be the good fit there because he's good with young players. He was in Chicago. He was in the Marlins organization as well. But so if I'm the Padres, they failed completely. You separate yourself with all of their coaching staff. So I think Skip's kind of a victim of guilt by association with the manager. So I could see him landing someplace else. I could see him actually landing in a job like with us as a bench coach, or maybe with a team like Arizona or someplace like that, because he worked out there with McGuire there in California and Arizona. But another guy, I mean, I'd like to see him give McGuire a job in the minors myself as a head coach someplace in the minor leagues. And we don't know yet. Maybe Willie McGee or some of those guys that decide they're not going to come back and don't want to be a part of the circus, so to speak. We just don't know until it happens. But the other guy, like you said, I'm a Matt Holliday fan. I think he's the kind of guy as a bench coach. I think he brings valuable wisdom and knowledge to the game. The guy that I keep hearing over and over again is Larry Walker. But Larry Walker has said for years he's done with baseball. That's part of his life that's over. I'm moved on. But yet every time something like this happens, his name recirculates. What about a Rick Ankiel, a guy like that? I mean, he could talk to pitchers and hitters both. He's so, you never know until it happens. I mean, that would not at all. It would not astound me or surprise me if a Rick Ankiel or something like that. But I think that the Cardinals now, we have too many former players sitting over there, I guess you could say, even with just Willie, but before. But they do bring them from within. So maybe there's somebody we've not, but our minor leagues haven't really done anything the last 2 years. So I don't know if any coach is going to move up, because I was really surprised they brought Marmol, Shilt, Clapp, and Pop all up to the majors at one time. I was like, we just depleted AA and AAA in one day. So, and I think that's part of that system too. But yeah, because I can't see Alberts move into the bench coach position because he's the hitting coach. They're going to embrace his system. And I think that becomes the whole system has to embrace it. The guys in Palm Beach have to embrace it, or Johnson City, or whoever they're down there in the single A, high A. I think those guys have to embrace it. I think it has to come through the system. And as those guys start coming into the system, then you'll see and reap those benefits. So that's why I think Alberts is here a long stay. I don't think it's a short run for him. But yeah, I mean, if we had that spot open and they were pursuing Trevor Story, then I could see, like you said, I could see the connection there. I just don't. I mean, right now, I would say I would say Skip Schumacher is probably my favorite. After all that, I guess I kind of roundabout way. My ramblings.
No, I agree, and I think somebody like an Ankiel, I think he kind of likes it in the booth. As kind of the backup voice. I think he has fun doing that. Another would be like Jim Edmonds. I think he's comfortable in the booth, or whatnot. But Lance Berkman would be a name that he's got coaching experience. Matt Holliday's been coaching, with the Oklahoma State, So I think maybe somebody like that has some familiarity would be a good fit. And granted, not everybody that was a good baseball player is a good manager or a good coach. We do have a lot of former Cardinals that go down to spring training and help the guys with drills and stuff. And I personally love to see that, because I don't know much about other teams and how they go about it, but just that, that it's not just nostalgia, but I think some of those players, they can relate, hey, I watched these guys, so they take a little bit more from them. I did find it interesting that despite, whether or not we moved on from Mike Maddox, that Chris Carpenter, moved on and got a gig with the Angels organization. So, he was somebody that he'd been a guest, I guess, down in the minors helping occasionally, but didn't get offered a gig here. So I was kind of surprised. But if that was something that he wanted to do and the Cardinals weren't, presenting it, I hope him all the best out in LA.
Again, I mean, what role would he play? I mean, I mean, Duncan was a catcher, so he worked with the pitchers all the time. He's used to that. I could see that. But and the only reason I mentioned Nate Keel as a bench coach is, like I said, he played both positions. He understands the game. But Carpenter, unless you're replacing Maddox, Carpenter is just kind of another voice that you really don't want in your ear. But I understand why they didn't offer him. Maybe he didn't want a AAA position, or we don't know, because I know he was a casualty of the downsizing during COVID and all that. And I think a lot of those guys kind of got pushed around, and maybe he thought he was coming back. But at one point, they had talked to Carp about stuff, and he acted like he wasn't really interested in a full-time gig because his kids and all that was going on. But I was shocked when I read that the Angels. I mean, I'm sorry, that's one zoo I don't want no part of. That's a circus there by itself. That the owner there, man, I don't know how he became a millionaire. I really don't. As bad as he was, I mean, stop and think of the money he threw around. I mean, he signed Hancock and Albert that year, and then he got the pitchers, and it was like all that money, and they didn't win jack.
Yeah, and as much as people they like to go crazy about Mozeliak, and we've said this before of the Yankees, they don't win, they haven't won a World Series since what we have, and look at the money they throw around. And the Dodgers were kind of proof this year that they squeaked past us in wild card. They did advance, but they had a week and a half more baseball than what we did. With like buku bucks more spent on the books. But you look at the Angels, and they went out and spent that ridiculous contract on Pujols that, even though I wanted him to stay a Cardinal, I mean, the money that it just was not going to add up. Then you have Mike Trout, who's arguably the best player in baseball, Shohei Ohtani, who's now the best player in baseball. And then you go out and acquire like an Anthony Rendon, who I know was hurt most of the year, but he was the hottest third base free agent. And you're struggling to be third place, in the division. And that's a struggle for them. That speaks volumes that some people think competing for us, if we're not advancing in the playoffs, that it's a total loss of a season. Now, I get it that it's a disappointment. I mean, I want the Cardinals to win a World Series every year. We predict them to. But, realistically, you got to realize not every team is going to win a title. I can't remember exactly the amount of years now, but back-to-back champions haven't happened, and so many.
Yeah, in the National League. Yeah.
Right, so it's that you've got like fierce competition, and everybody's got a different blueprint. There is no guaranteed blueprint of signing an all-star team and spending a shitload of money. That's not a guarantee. And then, having a stud minor league system all come up like the Rays and what the Padres did before they brought in all these guys. It's like that didn't guarantee a win. The Dodgers, again, they won their championship last year in a shortened season. And that was the first title since '88. And look at all the great talent they've had, and the money that they've spent. So, again, as Cardinal fans, we are spoiled. We'd be the first to admit that. But I think our ownership does put us, in a fighting chance. Sometimes I think we'd like them to go a little bit over the top. But they went and done some things lately with getting a Goldschmidt and an Arenado that, I mean, anybody that would say they wanted anybody other than those two on the corners right now are out of their mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the greed side of our sport, and especially like a St. Louisan, and you're a Cardinals fan or even a Blues fan. I think you expect your team to be there and win all the time, which is perfectly fine because there's no fan. Stop and think about it. There are Texas Rangers fans, Seattle Mariners fans. Seattle's going, oh my God, I'd love to have a play-in game. Let us be there just once. Let us be a playoff game. What's it been, 30 years, whatever, since, they had a playoff game. And so, and even like Tampa, you look at them and you say, well, they're a small market team. Their owner's saying now they're going to have to play someplace else. They cannot play there and make a profit. And yet they were in the World Series, last year. So again, they have to gimmick. They do the opener. They brought some fan out of the stands, I think, and signed him to a contract, and just in case they needed him, the guy never played. It's some 35-year-old. But so the fact that our system has worked for as long as it has proved that these guys know what they're doing, and that's where my trust is. I will be the first person to always admit that I was not a La Russa fan. I mean, I thank Tony for what he did. I know he's a Hall of Famer. He did a great job. But as far as a personnel person, I'm not a Tony La Russa fan. I'm still not. I think one of the dumbest hires Chicago ever made was to hire a guy that doesn't like young players. It doesn't make no sense to me. I mean, the first thing he did when he got to St. Louis was he jettisoned all of our young players and he wanted older players. And he kept bringing veterans in, him and Jockert. And then they destroyed what little bit of we didn't even have a minor league system. They destroyed what little bit we did have. But, with Mozeliak, it started from the ground up. I mean, we went to the draft. They selected pitchers. That was their key. And like I said, one of my best friends, Jim, he's a diehard Cubs fan. And he says, St. Louis for years and years has done it backwards. You go out and get power hitters. You can always sign a pitcher. And there's 29 teams in Major League Baseball looking for pitching. And it's funny, every time St. Louis is on the phone, it's always, hey, can we trade for this pitcher? Every single time. So, I think the blueprint that St. Louis has is that of a winning one. And I think it's the right path, because that's the reason we are the Cardinals way or the Cardinals nation. And teams emulate what we did or what John Mozeliak did. And whether people like to admit it or not, even the guy in Chicago that was the best GM in baseball, he tried to do it the same way we did it when Mo came in. He just ripped off all the old guys and started and rebuilt the team. And we talked about it before, Theo Epstein was good at building championship teams. He just wasn't good at sustaining them. He did in Boston. He killed them. He did the same thing in Chicago, and they're paying for it now. And even like my buddy says, he said, they're the largest city in the world, or second largest, I guess, behind New York. And yet they can't keep a team together because they can't afford it. But yet they're sold out every night in Chicago, and they're partying out their players. And so in St. Louis, we don't do that. There's no fire sales. There's no, hey, we need to clear the rosters. We ride it out till the end of the year. And then thank you, Matt. You did a great job, Carp. We'll miss you. Move along. And I think if Carlos Martinez wouldn't have got hurt this year, I think we would have traded him. I think he'd have been gone mid-season. I don't think he would have finished the season with us. They would have got something for him. And that's what we do. And next year is going to be an intriguing year, because how do you handle Molina? That's going to be, to me, I think that's going to be the key of the entire season next year. Knowing Molina at his age, you have to groom somebody or bring somebody in. And he's going to want to start every game because he knows it's last year. But how are you going to bring somebody in to take his spot for 2023 if the guy never gets to play? And I don't know, are we going to have that Matheny and Yachty transfer of power like they did when Matheny, he basically trained Yachty.
Yeah, I think the difference between the two is just the credentials that Molina's got climbing the ranks for Hall of Fame, where Mike Matheny, it was, he was going to be that traveling man, I mean, he didn't have the numbers that he had to keep, racking up in order to make a statement. I think with Molina, it's going to be, he's going to play as many games as possible. And that may be something that Marmol has to deal with, but I think that story kind of writes itself. I think, Molina and Wainwright are going to kind of be the same as they were this year. I mean, maybe the numbers won't be exactly the same, but they're going to be that catalyst that they go out and they do what they're expected to. I'll wrap this up by just kind of saying, the expectations for Marmol and what the Cardinals are going to do next year, I don't think it's a World Series or bust, meaning Marmol will be on the hook or hot seat if they don't. But I do think that, all the projections of when the young Cardinal players are supposed to hit their peak, the 2022 season has been that peak year. And for that to fall on the same year that Molina and Wainwright are going to, I think there is a lot of pressure on this being a year where if the Cardinals are in it and need to go over the hump, this is when the Cardinals will go make that move. And I also think that during free agency, this is going to be, whether it's a shortstop or a starting pitcher, I think if they're going to make a move, it's going to be to give Marmol the most weapons that he can, so Mo doesn't look like an idiot. I mean, he's going to cover his ass, on this.
I agree.
So I think that this is going to be the year that we all get excited every year, but I think there's something about 2022 season with a new manager, the farewell tour, some of the young guys. There's just a lot on the plate, and the pressure is a little bit on Mo because I'm not saying his job's at risk by any means, but it is kind of everybody's getting tired of the same old same. Like something's got to change. Changing a manager, you can do that so many times. Players in and out, you can do that so many times. Eventually, you got to get it done. And so I think 2022 is when we're going to see a lot happen, a lot of good things.
Yeah, I think the free agency thing's going to let us know what's going on. I really do. I mean, there's a lot of intriguing guys out there. I mean, even like Kershaw, he said already. He said either I'm a Dodger or I'm going back. I'm going to the Rangers. He's not going to play anyplace else. You got Seager, Story. Oh, I think we can get Baez. That's yeah, he'll fit right in. We're losing Carlos. One crazy person replaces the other. No, but I agree with you. The number one rule in government work is cover thy own ass. And so I think, like you said, I think Mozeliak's going to come in and say, all right, this is the year. And I mean, unfortunately, as much as we had come off the books, we got to pay that guy at third base this year, so that's going to be a big deal. And then Yachty, and of course we know that, Wainwright, got the 17 million. So that's another fat salary. But three big ones coming off. And then if you get a shortstop, you're going to trade to Young. So I could see, honestly, a story coming. I really can. Because I think a lot of teams are going to shy away from him. I don't think he's going to command the salary that people think he is. And I think we can hold our own with him, knowing that you have two other guys in the infield that can hit and they can carry a bad bat in the infield. But the other option is, I mean, maybe Edman moves to shortstop. I don't know. And that's for a future podcast. We're going to discuss all that. But again, I think I'm just trying to say, like you said, is this season's going to unfold real quick because it's going to be, what do we do in free agency? How do we stockpile weapons to make Marmol successful? And by making him successful, it makes John Mozeliak look like the genius that he honestly is. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, the guy has been shrewd in a lot of his moves. He's just been underrated. I mean, if we would have landed Stanton a couple of years ago, he had been heralded then as a great guy and all that. And then the year later, when the injuries, he had been hated. So we lucked into that one. But so I just think, where the money's going to be spent, and I think it's coming. And I think this is going to be the year. The problem is what happens December 2nd.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And, that's something that I'm sure next week, hopefully we get some guys, from our admin team to join us. Hopefully Jared, can join us. But we want to do like a season wrap up where we kind of grade the 2021 season with the players and managers and just kind of giving our thoughts on how each one did and wrapping up the season. And then going forward, it'll be hot stove time before long. And anybody that's tuning in, we've appreciated a full season now of everybody tuning in weekly, or, if we put one out every 2 weeks, you've stuck with us. It's something we're going to continue doing throughout the off season. We might not do it every week, but so far there's still stuff to talk about. I mean, we didn't think we'd be talking about a Mike Shilt firing and then, a little over a week later and somebody else being already named manager. So there's a lot going on, and hot stove stuff, will be, topic of interest too all year. So any final words, as we kind of leave this Marmol episode here?
As much as I do want people to look forward to our coming shows, because As much as I like the baseball season itself, I rather enjoy the off season and the anticipation of what's going to happen and just looking forward to the season starting. So I think we enjoy the off season more as far as podcasting goes. But and of course we always enjoy everybody coming in and at least tuning in and listening to the first minute or two, and they get tired of hearing me and they move on. But so without them, we wouldn't be here. I mean, we're doing this for fun, of course, and it is just our opinions. But again, we have a lot of people in our group that drive us crazy, but you know what? It's because we all love baseball. We all love the Cardinals. We didn't like the way it ended this year, but hey, where we thought we were a month ago isn't nowhere near where we ended. So that's a good thing. And then on top of that, I mean, setting a franchise record 17 in a row, that was pretty amazing. So it was a fun ride. But we'll get into that on our next show. So this is episode, 27, I think we agreed. So I think we're going to end up with 30 by the end of the year. So that's pretty damn good for two guys who have no clue what the hell we're doing. But we, again, thanks everybody for coming in, turning in and listen to us, watch us, whatever you do. It's appreciated. Thanks for being on the group. That's another great thing. You meet interesting people just by joining the group, like this guy right here. We met in the group basically and became, he's my brother from another mother now. And Jared is close friends as well as the rest of the admin groups. But the Marmol thing, I'm intrigued, man. I'm looking forward to the start of the season. Let's start tomorrow, man. Let's play ball. Let's play 2.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And, on another note, I've been kind of behind the scenes working on a website here for us to where I can hopefully bring some of the Facebook and Twitter followers that we do have and, link them to our website where we're going to be having blog articles, written by some of our contributors. You can find our podcast available on there too. I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world, but I'm trying to get something set up to where, yeah, it's an understatement of the world, really. But if I get that up and running, we'll put a link in here in the description. But eventually, that'd be something we'd like to grow this podcast out even further. To where we do some blogs and interact with people on our official site instead of just having to rely on the other social medias. Facebook hasn't been too friendly to me lately, so I don't want to have to rely on them for all the content that we do put out. But we do appreciate everybody in the Facebook group and anywhere that they're finding our podcast, the audio versions, and the YouTube channel, and all the subscribers. So for Larry and myself, we hope you tune in again next week and go Cards.
Cards.